Everyone needs some comfort in their final moments on Earth. That's why animals have been used in hospices for decades. They provide much-needed emotional support in our greatest time of need. When Oscar the cat arrived at an aged care facility, he didn't seem to want anything to do with the patients. But in the end, he had a bigger impact on their lives than any of the doctors or nurses ever could. He developed an uncanny ability that nobody believed. That's what a doctor at Brown University found out when he studied Oscar. He was frightened by the findings. Hey there, Viral Video here. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell. We post the most beautiful, amazing, and scary videos every single day. Let's proceed with the video. It all started back in 2005 when Oscar the cat started his job at Steer House Nursing and Rehabilitation Center in Rhode Island. Sure, it's not normal for cats to have jobs, but this was more of an experiment than a job. Along with 5 other cats, he was adopted by the center to give some support to their patients. They either have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease or other incurable illnesses that make it hard for them to understand the world around them. To start with, he seemed like any other cat. While not exactly like the other cats, it seemed like he wasn't really cut out for the job of providing therapy. He couldn't stand to be around people. Oscar had a few incidents where he was found loudly hissing at staff members who tried to pick him up. He wasn't exactly affectionate with the patients. He either preferred to have his own space. Sometimes he would go missing for hours before nurses found him under a bed in a janitor's closet, or jumping from the bookshelf to the bookshelf in the rec room. The staff there was using therapy dogs before, but this was the first time using cats. They were a little apprehensive at first, but they thought there was no harm in giving it a try. Steer House was one of the best facilities in the area, and doctors often used it for studies and tests. In fact, Dr. David Dova was completing a study there. When Oscar first arrived, he didn't realize it then, but this cat would change his entire life. David knew the staff well and was always polite and courteous. He mainly put his head down to do his work, talking with patients, and didn't have much time for much chit-chat. When he did stop for a talk, he was a serious man preferring to talk about science, logic, rather than spirituality. David's research that year was about dementia and how to slow down memory loss. Steer House was the perfect place for that because it had a dementia unit, treating all its dementia patients in one place. The center was specially set up to treat his illness, so David had all of the equipment and knowledge on hand when he needed it. He could talk to the staff about their experience with people in their last stage of life and how they were responsible to medication. Oscar arrived a year into David's research along with 5 other cats. David didn't think too much of it as his research wasn't focused on animal therapy, but he was interested to see how the patients would react. Most of them appreciated having companions, even if some of them, like Oscar, had a bit of an attitude. But Oscar had more than just an attitude. His cold demeanor was hiding a secret power, which the staff at Steer House started to notice after the first year. Even though Oscar didn't generally like to be around other people, he seemed to hang around some at very particular times. He would be sitting with one patient one day and another the next, but it wasn't long before they began to notice a strange pattern. Oscar was gravitating towards people who were in their final moments of life. Sometimes Oscar would visit a patient that would die within hours. Everyone at Steer House thought it must have been some kind of weird coincidence. David argued with the staff that there must be a simple explanation. But the more Oscar predicted death, the spookier it got. Oscar had already predicted at least 30 deaths when David decided to get to the bottom of it. People, not just in the facility but in the community, started to believe there was something more to it. Finally, to settle the debate, David thought, if this cat really was able to predict the future, then he needed some hard evidence to back it up. After all, he was a scientist and he had a suspicion that there was something else going on. Maybe some of the nurses were unintentionally signaling to Oscar when a patient's health was deteriorating, or maybe some of the reports had just been a result of confirmation bias. Oscar might just be around a lot, and the staff had gotten in their heads that he had a special power, and that he picked specific patients they were looking for it. David got started with his experiment. He isolated the variables as much as he could and observed everything sure enough within the next couple of weeks. Oscar went to sit with 2 elderly patients, one in a wheelchair and one bedridden. In less than half a day, they had died. The more he dug into the case, the more these findings were confirmed. By the time he finished his experiment, Oscar had successfully predicted more than 20 deaths in a row. David even submitted his study to the prestigious journal, and it was accepted. David's theory about the phenomenon was that humans might be releasing some kind of chemical when they are in the process of dying that Oscar was able to pick up. But it was anyone's guess what that was. While David tried to pinpoint the science behind Oscar's abilities, others believed more and more that it was supernatural. Maybe Oscar was passing from one world to another, or he had some kind of sixth sense. David didn't agree with these, but it was hard for him to totally dismiss them. Oscar's abilities were no longer a folk story passing through the community. They were hard science. It had gotten to the point where staff members were following Oscar's science to alert the patient's family members. If he went to curl up near a patient, it was time to get the family to pay one last visit. Oscar had given countless families precious last moments with their loved ones. He was called the Angel of Death by locals and feared as much as he was loved. Oscar even made his way into the news with national headlines and TV stations covering the freaky phenomenon. Although you never wanted Oscar to visit you, his presence could be a blessing. Many of the patients dying at Steer House didn't have any loved ones to come and visit them. Even when they did, because of a lot of them were suffering from memory disorders, it was hard for them to connect with their family. Memories could fade and reappear, but the presence of the cat was different. They didn't need to know how long he had been there or what the relationship they had with him. He was just there to support. Oscar would stay by their side until the very end. After they had passed, he would promptly get up and walk off, awaiting another person's hour of need. Nobody wanted to be lonely when they crossed over, and Oscar made sure that everyone always had someone there. In fact, sometimes when family members insisted on Oscar leaving the room, he refused to. He would hiss, meow, and scratch on the door after he had been locked out. It was like he needed to be with the patient in those moments. Eventually, time caught up with the Angel of Death himself at the ripe old age of 17. And after making hundreds of people's deaths a little easier, Oscar himself passed away. There was no one there to come and predict his death for him, but he did that himself in his last few moments. He chose to spend them with the nurses and doctors of the Steer House, including David. This little cat had started out at the center not even wanting to be there, but the number of lives he changed was truly incredible. If you talk to anyone who had a family member at Steer House over the last decade, chances are that they were helped by Oscar in one way or another. What did you think of the story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, like the video and subscribe. See you next time.